Good morning. We are grateful to gather online and a few of us in the sanctuary as the Unitarian Universalist Society for a time of music, inspirational words, reflection, and connection. I'm Peggy Giragus, your Director of Congregational and Community Engagement, and your Zoom host for this morning. If you are visiting our service today, welcome. We hope you find the service meaningful. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't all believe the same things, but we covenant to journey together as we search for truth and meaning and live out our principles. Today, we especially reflect on journeying as a community as we welcome new members to our UU Society, and also as we begin a series of services that explore a potential 8th principle to add to the current UU 7 principles.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Diana Smith, the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society, and it is wonderful to be with you all this morning. In these times of change, it is so important to be together, to come together as a spiritual community, to gain the sustenance that we each and all need, and to help nourish each other. As members of a covenantal faith that expresses our core value of love through how we agree to be together and to support each other, it is good to come together and to affirm that even when we cannot yet all be together in body, although that's hopefully coming sooner than later, this congregation remains strong and connected. To affirm that we have faith and hope in this congregation, in each other, and in the ways that we continue to grow together during the challenges of life. And to affirm that wherever any of us is on our life's journey, whether we come to worship with joy in our hearts, weighted with burdens, in need of rest, or searching for others to engage in the struggle with us, we are glad. And this congregation is glad that we are here. Today, we'll be welcoming new members and reflecting together on how widening the circle of concern can help us live into our religion's potential and to transform lives, including ours. And so, as we begin our service, I want to share with you Outwitted by Edwin Markham. Edwin Markham writes, "He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in." Now, Edwin Markham was somebody who was shut out of a lot of circles, especially during tough times and when he was advocating for change. And so as we begin this service, we know that tough times or things that we're not familiar with can squeeze on us and can sometimes influence us to draw circles that keep people out. But there are things that we can do that help make people, there are things we can do that make us feel like people want us around. What are some of those things that people can do for you or that you could do for other people that let people know that you want them around or help you feel like you're wanted? If you're online today, I invite you to write some of those things in the chat so we can celebrate the things that help each and all of us, and that help fill us back up with kindness. Because one of those things that we can always do when we are feeling shut out or when we're noticing people being shut out of a circle is we, like Edwin Markham, can find a way with love to win, to draw a circle that takes everyone in. And so as we begin, let's join our voices from various places in song. Donna Simonton will lead us in Gather the Spirit.
Separate COVID started. So I found my COVID-19 pounds and I've lost them. So here I am back the same. Anyway, each week we light a candle for justice and healing. But we're going to start off with, as Unitarian Universalists, we light a flame within a chalice as a symbol of sanctuary and safety, to unite us all in our worship and to remind us of our ongoing search for light of truth. If you'll join me, life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the wonders and mystery of this great gift. So let us now kindle the flame of our liberal religious heritage and renew our covenant of mutual love and care. Love is our doctrine, the quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to serve those in need. This we promise, this we covenant with life and one another. Each week, when we light a candle for justice and healing, we hold a space in our understanding of interdependence, that our liberation is bound up in every other person's liberation, and our feelings of rage and heartbeat break over the ongoing pandemics of illness and racism, the devastation of climate chaos, and the waves of trauma washing over our world. We light this candle to help us hold space together for processing what is happening in our lives and in our world, and to remind ourselves that together we create resilience and hope. We light this candle that we may not be numbed or lost in injustice, devastation, illness, and trauma, but rather find strength, courage, and love together to continue engaging in the struggles of liberation, justice, and healing. Today, we also light a candle that we're particularly mindful of those in Ukraine and those around Ukraine, as well as those in war, that power is overcoming them. After I light this candle, let's hold a time of silence in our hearts and our minds, or perhaps to lift up your own prayers. As we listen to and perhaps sing along with our centering music, please take this time to sink more deeply into the presence of each other. Joining in the singing, if you wish. If you're online participating in the service and you'd like to, please turn up your cameras, turn up your volume, and as we speak and we speed this time together, beholding with each other's faces, each other's presence. And please feel free to use the chat. Let us know that your chalice is lit.
You're online, please turn your videos back off. It's a momentous time in the life of a congregation when someone new is welcomed into the covenant of membership, a time to rejoice in the gifts of this spiritual community. Today, Peggy Garrigus, Director of Congregational and Community Engagement, and Alan Swanson, President of the Board of Trustees, will be joining me in leading the new member covenanting ceremony. Peggy and Alan, would you come up here? Unitarian Universalism is a non-creedal faith. No one needs to assent to a statement of belief in order to find membership with us. It is our covenant that binds us together, our mutual promise to travel together in the ways of care and love. Being a covenantal rather than a creedal community means that as a religious community, we're defined by how we come together and the values and ways of being that we choose to affirm and promote, as well as by our ways of relating to various theological truths, rather than by a specific belief system. You could say that being defined by covenant means that Unitarian Universalist congregations are defined by love and the ways that we are seeking to live love more fully. That's because covenants are entered into in relationship and are a way of saying to who we want to be in relation to, of saying how we want to be in relationship with one another. And they're a way of saying to whom and for what we want to be accountable, how we want to be with one another, and often some of the fundamental principles of our actions. They can also tell us about what we aspire to be for one another and how we aspire to be together. Our covenants and what we covenant for fundamentally define us as Unitarian Universalists. They give us space to engage in our spiritual work that defines this as a faith community, a congregation, a church. And so this is a momentous occasion because it gives each of us the opportunity to renew our own commitments to living the covenant to the fullest and best that we can.
Each of the people we are celebrating this morning have taken the time and care to learn about Unitarian Universalism in this congregation. They've attended sessions to learn the history and values of Unitarian Universalism, or they have previous involvement with a UU congregation. They have learned some about our UUS history in the Iowa City and Coralville area, and about the variety of groups and opportunities that we offer. And they have attended a class where they met representatives of the board and membership associates and heard the importance of supporting our congregation with their time, energy, and financial resources. Each person has affirmed our values and our principles and said yes to the call of our mission to serve one another and the world. Each understands that our faith is a lifetime search for truth and meaning, and that joining this congregation affirms a willingness to grow as people, both emotionally and spiritually. When each of them signs the membership book, they are committing to the principles of Unitarian Universalism and to the values, mission, and vision of this congregation. I'll now call our new members' names, and I'll invite them to come forward, signing the membership book as they hear their name. Sarah Allward. Paul Gilbert. Sigmund Pelisek, and then Lucy Ray. Gail Ross. And Barbara Stannard.
May this be your religious and spiritual home, and may you be woven into the intricate fabric of this community's life together. Here you will be cared for, and you will be asked to care for others. We welcome your presence among us and ask that you join us in the life and mission of this congregation. In the presence of those gathered with us online and a few of us here in the sanctuary, I now ask you to state your intentions. Will you travel together with us in a covenant of mutual care and love? Help us be a welcoming and inclusive community and share in the joys and responsibilities of membership? Please say, we will. Will each of you join us joyfully and as fully as you're able in our shared ministry of serving others as we seek to be a welcoming and spiritually diverse home, a place where we act on our values to honor the earth, advocate for racial and social justice, foster deep connections, and embrace the ongoing quest for meaning? Please say, we will.
We want everyone to be able to welcome these new members. Since we're online, I invite the members of the congregation to say, we will, when I indicate, while the members who are in person with us say the words with me. Then I invite those of you who are online to extend your welcome to our new members using the chat function. So now, will you ongoing members joyfully welcome these persons into our congregation? Invite them into our shared ministries, be open to their unique gifts and wisdom, and covenant to travel with them and each other in friendship, respect, and love. Members of the congregation, please say, we will. We will. Do you renew your promise to travel together with one another in covenant of mutual care and love, to help us be a welcoming and inclusive community, and to participate in our shared service to one another and the world as fully as you are able? If so, please say, we do. We do.
Sarah, Paul, Sigmund, Lucy, Gail, and Barb. Joining the Unitarian Universalist Society is a powerful and transforming event in your life. Membership comes with both gifts and responsibilities. Within this community of seekers, you will be challenged to grow in spirit and to live out our UU principles in your lives within this congregation and beyond it. Ours is a shared ministry. You'll be called to offer the fullness of who you are as individual persons in service of our mutual promises to love and care for each other. Our deep hope is that you will open your hearts to accept the gifts of spiritual community and know that you do not journey alone. As we end this ceremony, as a sign you bring to this community, we'll invite you one at a time to light a candle here in the sanctuary. After that, in honor of signing the membership book, you'll receive a rose of friendship. Like life and like the rose, the journey of spiritual community may be thorny at times, and our hope is that your journey among us will unfold as sweetly as the petals of the rose. We're glad you have chosen to make this your spiritual home. Welcome. Please light your candle and receive your gifts.
from Beloved Community by Sensi Angel Kaido Williams. That's worse than my name. It's the community's job to figure out how we can stretch into the so-called margins to broaden our understanding of the ability to be inclusive. Inclusivity, not how do we make you a part of what we are, but how do we become more of what we are?
Now I invite you into a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are grateful for all our faith has given us, for the new people who find a spiritual home here, and for the ways they enrich us, and we learn to become more of what we are together. When we lift up our 7 principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they're more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe, they tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. Today, as we gather, we are aware that while Unitarian Universalism has given us much as individuals and as a congregation, it has also at times fallen short of the image that was presented of what it could be, and to many of those who have embraced this religion. But we're gathered here today with the knowledge, too, that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move towards a place of wholeness, a place that perhaps never existed for us as a denomination, as a whole. It's been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we're here today because we're mindful of that past, and because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise, and we want to help shape it in those ways. Let us open our hearts and seek new ways of understanding, that we may grow and change and continue to live love ever more fully into this world. Amen. Blessed be.
Our second reading is from Racist or Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Fundamentally, racism, its heartbeat has always been denial. And the sound of the heartbeat has always been, well, I'm not a racist. To be more specific, the sound of that heartbeat has always been not racist. And so in writing how to become an anti-racist, I've had one single goal. If I could somehow shape the world, what I would hope for would come out of this book is very simply that we would eradicate the term not racist from the American vocabulary. And then it would force people to recognize that they're either, what? Racist or anti-racist. It would force Americans to recognize that all policies are either racist or anti-racist. All ideas are either racist or anti-racist, and that we can truly have an accounting of ourselves, of our ideas, of our policies, and of our country. The third reading is from To All Get Together Free by Chris Crass. To become an anti-racist faith community, the key question for a white majority community is not how do we get people of color to join our faith community? It is instead, how can we make a prolonged, spiritually rooted, engaged commitment to uproot white supremacy within our community and take ongoing collective action to challenge it in society? Our goal is not to have white people sit alongside a person of color so as to affirm those that white people aren't racist. Our goal is to build and be a part of a beloved community, united to end structural oppression and unleash collective liberation. Our goal is to join our hearts and our minds to the task of destroying white supremacy in every worldview, policy, law, institution, and governing body in our society.
So, in 2017, in the midst of a racially charged moment, and as Unitarian Universalism was attempting to reckon with how to change age-old structures of oppression, in order to understand how we could keep moving forward, the Unitarian Universalist Association Commission on Institutional Change was charged to conduct an audit of power structures and analyze systemic racism within the Unitarian Universalist Association. The commission met with and received testimony from Unitarian Universalists around the country. Some of that's included in their report. They also did deep research and deep reflection. In June 2020, the commission released its report. We'll be sharing the link with you about how to access that report later. Unitarian Universalists have been invited to engage deeply with the report and its implications for our congregations. In fact, in winter and spring of 2021, this congregation's Board of Trustees read the report together to help us begin to reflect on what it tells us about UUS. The report, which you can read online, tells us much about who we are, who we can be, and how we might get there. And so I want to share with you some of what it says. The authors write, "The world around us is different than it was a decade ago, or even 5 years ago. The question is, how will our living tradition keep up with the times? What choices will we make or fail to make? And how will that affect the relevancy and survival of our faith? Here are some of the realities in which our faith exists as we enter 2020. Those are their words. And I'll just note from here in 2022 that research shows that these trends that I'm about to go through have only increased as we've gone through 2 years of the pandemic. Our nation is moving away from religious institutions. According to the Pew Research Center, fewer people are participating in religious communities. Emerging generations report higher rates of people not affiliated with institutional forms of religion, especially Christianity, those known as nuns because they've checked the nun box when asked about religious affiliation. Increasingly, younger generations are the ones exiting religious institutions. While Unitarian Universalists often look at the slightly increasing number of people who identify as atheists and those who identify as not religious as an opportunity for us, some of the reasons that people are exiting appear to be tied to the nature of religious institutions as much as to changing beliefs. Unitarian Universalism is not immune. We too, as a whole, are losing congregations and have many teetering on the edge of collapse. While we typically refer to 1,000 UU congregations, the truth is that we now have 819 congregations that would meet the standard to become a congregation today. And again, standing here in 2022, I'll note that while as of yet I've only found anecdotal evidence, this seems to have decreased even more as the 2 years of the pandemic have taken a toll on many congregations. As institutional religion declines, more who enter our doors are not refugees from other faiths, but are experiencing faith communities for the first time through our faith and are seeking spiritual ground. The demographics of our nation have changed, and with them, expectations around cultural competency. In the face of these trends, we face some critical divides among us. Since the mid-20th century, more Unitarian Universalists are come-inners than birthright Unitarian Universalists. Many of those who came in during the 1960s to 1980s were interested in getting away from religious practices that they felt were non-rational, demeaning, or illogical. The attraction of our faith was what it was not, non-creedal, non-hierarchical, and the emphasis was on personal freedom. These are good things. In the recent decades, more of those entering our doors have been attracted by our beliefs, and their interest has been in the tenets of our faith. These are good things too. Some among us believe we can continue the practices that have been most prevalent in Unitarian Universalism without change. Others feel it's critical for us to change. Many of these tend to be younger or identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or hold other identities that are marginalized in UU community, such as gender expansive. And some believe that work to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity is optional or tangential to our faith. Others believe that it is a form of spiritual practice among us necessary to live out our faith. And so, as a religion, we are finding that in a world where people can understand more about one another because of the ways that the internet allows us to enter one another's lives, cultural competency is increasingly expected. Our Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist theological legacy has long put us at the forefront of advocacy and prophetic vision to widen the circle of a concern for marginalized groups. And I know that this is what has drawn so many of us here. And yet, without a focus on addressing today's issues of inclusion, we're unprepared to live our values. We've spent time comparing our religious wounds rather than healing them. As a result, sometimes we've operated from a least common denominator approach rather than one linked to our highest values as a people of faith. Our time as a haven or a social club for those disaffected by other religions has passed. In these searing times of political division, climate change, economic polarization, and global strife, people need a sustaining faith. Economic and demographic trends alone would require us to look anew at efforts to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity, and we also have a theological imperative to do so. While we continue to attract a greater diversity of people and to retain a very small percentage, we continue to retain a very small percentage of those who don't match the resourced, white, aging majority within our congregations. And as with other predominantly white institutions, We failed to acknowledge the extent to which the resources that have been built by our institutions were amassed at the expense of people of color, especially Indigenous and Black people. The unfinished and interrupted work on race within Unitarian Universalism has marred our ability to move forward at a time when accountability, multicultural awareness, and inclusive language are becoming the new normal in the larger world. And so engagement in this type of development is spiritual and faithful work that allows for growth and change. We need change at the personal and interpersonal levels, and most of all, we need to make systemic changes that can be ongoing and lasting. And so in doing this work to widen the circle of concern and to deepen diversity, equity, and inclusion within Unitarian Universalism and within this congregation, what is at stake, the Commission says, is nothing less than the future of our faith. This work is crucial because it's about people that we love. It's about our own growth and development, and it's about leaning into the future of our faith and the world as it exists now, and as global changes pull us even further from what was. This is true even as, or perhaps especially as we come to the end of the second year of this pandemic. As many of us are tired and are wondering what we want to do next for ourselves and our own spiritual and emotional connections. But even though many of us are tired, this is work that can't wait. What's more, it's work that can actually connect us, that can give us some of the spiritual and emotional connections and sustenance that we seek as it connects us with ourselves, with each other, and with the flow of life and the spirit of love itself. Now, people often ask me about the stole I'm wearing today, this one, about what it means. This stole is about what I believe for our religion. It's about love writ large. My younger sister made this stole for me for my ordination. To make it, she sent fabric to the children in my life, in my biological and chosen family, who I love dearly and who are ever helping me understand love and how we live it in new ways. They traced and cut out the shapes of their hands. Many of you have done this activity, and sent them to my sister. She assembled them into this, with a gold ribbon running between and connecting them all, as does the flow of life and love, and as does the call of our faith. And here's the thing. The children who traced their hands, they're Black, Indigenous, people of color, and white. They are of many different mental, emotional, and physical abilities and disabilities. They're of different national heritages and have made homes around the world. They're of different gender identities and sexual orientations. And they're Unitarian Universalist, liberal Christian, atheist, spiritual but not religious, agnostic, and Jewish. Yes, that's all here. They are our present as well as our future. And I want and I know that we can have a Unitarian Universalism that loves and nurtures all of them for all of who they are. And yet, the other side of this is the pain I've witnessed over and over again. Within Unitarian Universalism, when we've been much less than what we can be, and have hurt or pushed out UUs with marginalized identities. I've sat and talked with some of the same children and youth, as well as adult friends, family, and beloved colleagues, as they've talked about the emotional armor they sometimes have to put on in congregational life, or have discerned whether they can talk about who they are. And yet, as I've developed relationships and grown in this work, I've also had the privilege of being included or invited into identity-based caucus and worship spaces where groups of UUs gathered by identity have created vibrant, healthy, and deeply spiritual healing spaces that hold all of who they are, who we are, and have used those spaces to begin transforming Unitarian Universalism as a whole. And so I know that the dream, the journey of widening the circle, is possible and that the journey itself will enrich us in ways that we can barely imagine. I never would have imagined what I found on this journey. So what is this work of widening the circle of concern? What is it that we can do? Now, the Commission's report contains hundreds, literally hundreds of findings and recommendations, and don't worry, I am not going to go through all of them. I am not going to do that to you. For everything from congregations to how we develop and support religious professionals, to governance, to our national and regional bodies. And some of these recommendations, just a few, for congregations include, they say, congregational polity says that each of us, as individuals, makes up the shared body that is our community of faith. Each of us is an equal and needed partner in our living tradition. Each of us is responsible and accountable for the future of our faith. Each of us, that means you. That means me. That means every single person here. Reports continue to indicate that multicultural congregations are on the rise, and that progressive-minded working-age adults expect the basic practices of equity, inclusion, and diversity that many of our congregations currently lack. As we work towards a congregational model that can serve generations with new practices around diversity and equity, we will need other community models to complement and support what's available in congregations. In a time in which people do not enter religious communities easily or instinctively, we believe we need to have congregations more focused on promoting and providing opportunities to live our values. Some of these may sound a little familiar to you as things that we've been talking about. There's a reason for that. They also recommend that congregations with an interest in incorporating practices aimed at increasing equity, inclusion, and diversity more fully into their work have conducted racial audits to understand how they're actually doing. Leadership efforts should be focused on deepening a sense of how we live our values and core skills that will equip people to manage change, conflict, traumatic events, and generational differences. Work to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity should be incorporated into these efforts. And covenant and commitment, not comfort, should be the binding fabrics of UU congregations and other communities. The Widening the Circle of Concern report also makes theological recommendations. As the authors say, today, Unitarian Universalism lives in a diversity in thought, belief, and practice. We hold the many and of a vast range of practices, beliefs, and theological understandings. It can be said that contemporary Unitarian Universalism as lived and as a living tradition has two commitments: freedom of belief and its orientation towards inclusion, interdependence, and justice. These two commitments have shaped our faith tradition in positive ways and have also led to some problematic dynamics related to individualism. This needs to be balanced by a recentering of the communal. When we're rooted in our theological traditions, we have no choice but to engage in the practices of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And this is supported by what's often called the pillar principles of Unitarian Universalism, the first and the seventh principles, which may have drawn you to us. Those are promoting the inherent worth and dignity of all, and the fact that we live in an interdependent web of existence. While our principles and our theological heritage, when lived into fully, can call us to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we've seen all too often in the past few years, not just in Unitarian Universalism, but certainly in the wide world, when we do not explicitly commit to doing this work, we don't do it. And so, these next few months, UUS's Board of Trustees has endorsed this congregation engaging in a discussion of a proposed eighth principle for Unitarian Universalism. The goal of our engagement with this will be deciding whether we join the 155 congregations that have already voted to endorse or adopt the principle, and to encourage Unitarian Universalism as a whole to adopt this principle. So what is this eighth principle that I keep talking about? It says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. This principle was developed by two UUs, Paula Cole-Jones and Bruce Pollock Johnson, as they began to understand that members and congregations could follow the 7 principles without addressing racism and other oppressions at a systemic level. Their solution was to develop an 8th principle to correct this. There will be workshops and discussions or listening sessions being held in the next few months to discuss the 8th principle in much greater detail. But if you want to know more, for now you can visit www.8thprincipleuu.org. We'll also be sharing that link with you. And so, I invite you to say yes when you're invited into this process. Reflect on how it might help us engage with the crucial messages of widening the circle of concern. And beyond that, ask yourself, what is your work? And what is our work as a congregation to do? What is the risk if we do this work and engage in it joyfully? And what is the risk if we do not do this work? Leaving you with those questions, may we enter into this work more fully. So may it be. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you. How we give and what we do in our lives, our time, our resources, it's a reflection of our values. In response to the abundance that we are all blessed with, every week this congregation donates generously to organizations in the community whose work aligns with our values and principles. Our community partner agency this month is United Action for Youth, which works with youth, parents, and local community to provide services for teenagers 12 through 18 years old. It's a place for youth to have a voice and to give back creatively to their communities. On the screen, you're going to see instructions for how to give online, or you may take this time to write a check and address an envelope to UUS to be put in the mail. You may assist our community partners, contribute to the congregation to provide additional support for our operating expenses, or contribute towards your pledge to our society. The offering is a sign of commitment to this free congregation, which is completely supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join us today and join with us. As we give and receive this offering, may we be transformed by our giving, and may the world be transformed by our gifts. I'm truly grateful to be here today among you and among the people who are seeing me. I wish I could see all of you. The time will come. Nurturing gratitude and how we understand and express interdependence is part of how we live into our Unitarian Universalist faith. May what we have shared today help us to be more fully affirmed our interconnection and live into love and justice. I also wish to extend my welcome to our new members. It's great to see you here. Immediately after the service, we'll have time for all to join in conversation and community. And now, to close our service today, we're going to sing Break Not the Circle.
The final hymn today, Break Not the Circle, reminds us that Unitarians and Universalists have been drawing circles for a very long time. The Universalists had an offset cross. The Unitarians had not a cross, but a chalice. And so that's why we have two circles. So we've been drawing circles a long time. But this text and this hymn are not particularly familiar. They were written for a competition preparing for the new hymnal. And while I don't know Fred Kahn, Dr. Thomas Benjamin, friend and colleague, retired professor from Peabody, and long time music director at the UU Church of Columbia, Maryland, which is right between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So I'm going to ask Jean-Louis to play the melody all the way through because it's really not familiar, and then we'll sing together. You can do the whole melody and not just the last.
Please join me now in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or of commitment. All these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Before I send you back out, I want to mention that we have our next concert in our new music series happening this coming Saturday. It will happen live and in person on Saturday, February 26th at 4 p.m., focusing on music from Asia. Xingfei is putting together this concert series. I hope many of you will join us if you're able. And so, as we go out into the world, I invite you this week to reflect on and to act on widening the circle. Find those ways in your own life that you can draw people in and that you can widen the circle so that more can be held within it. And I invite you this day and this week, may we look at ways that we can widen the circle in our faith, that we may grow ever more fully, ever more inclusive. As you go forth, may you find peace, love, and justice, living love ever more fully and fiercely into this world. Amen, and blessed, blessed be. And please join in singing the choral benediction if you'd like.